This intern was like,
You bang your gavel and do
Jim,
it.
let's
yeah.
I don't know if Jim wants to address that right now.
And my question, okay, and you can answer this, okay, so they're paying us $15,500 to rent the space. And then they turn around, how many beds are in their facility?
6.
6. And how much do they lease those beds out to the various counties that could use them, including our own county?
Well, what they do is they draw down the current Title IV federal foster care rate, which is approximately $6,500 per youth.
Okay, so, and that's what we pay them when we put a student, an inmate or
A youth in placement,
placement, we pay them $6,500.
which is federally reimbursable through the Title 40 program.
No, I
Yes.
understand about the federal reimbursement thing. And I think, Mr. Chairman, that now my blood is really starting to
I know,
boil
I know.
because, and it has nothing to do with this particular thing, but it has to do with the whole foster care system in its entirety. And is the amount of money, and that's why we have the foster homes that, I mean, not foster care, the group homes, these like
The foster homes.
borrow boys, which are kind of super foster homes. These, it's one thing to have a foster home where you have like a family that brings in a kid and there's a placement and stuff, and they get paid whatever it is for food and clothing and kind of basic housing and shelter. But then you have the people that are like in the business where they do 6, 12, 24, and they pull down, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And if I really felt like, and this goes back, I mean, I got into it back in the 80s with Diane Watson. You remember her probably. She was
Los Angeles.
she could have been a linebacker for the 49ers or for the LA Rams or something. And she was a tough nut, man. You didn't want to cross her path at all. And we did. We got into it at Tahoe, and it was like this pine tree therapy mentality where the urban centers were sending these kids up into the rural settings. And, so we're importing them into our county, and they're all supposed to get better by, getting out of the urban core. And she was the chair of the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, and the idea of throwing this kind of money, and back then, the rates were like maybe $2,500 or $3,500 a month per kid being placed. But back in the 80s, that was a lot of money, and $6,500, even though that's the minimum the feds reimburse, a lot of these places will pull down, probably based on that, they're pulling down maybe $10,000 a month per kid. You get like 6 of those in there, that's $60,000, maybe in a month, and times 12 months, and you can figure out what the numbers are, and then they give us rent $15,500. And if we're paying $6,500 a placement and we're collecting $1,500, $500 in rent for the whole year, I gotta tell you, we're on the lopsided end of a bad deal.
Which is why we're looking at that contract.
Yeah, well, and I gotta tell you,
expires.
I didn't vote for it when it went to the $15,500 rate. I definitely didn't vote for it when it was at the $1,500 rate, and that should be $155,000 if you're gonna start putting it into comparison to the amount of monies that are coming in. And I realize that's not what environmental alternatives are going to say. And you say, okay, fine, what are we going to do with the facility if it's mothballed? Well, to be honest with you, given the other dynamics, maybe we should pursue the deal with the sheriff about maybe turning it into a women's portion of the jail, to kind of get into the adult corrections and use it for that and go back to the way we used to transport kids to whatever facility.
We've got to take a look at the whole.
I mean, so that dynamic needs to be out there, and I think it needs to be explored. But $6,500 a kid, yeah. Let's go on to something else, Mr. Chairman.
We shall move on then.
We have, our placements with the Borrow Boys Ranch, and we have reduced those significantly. We reduced that down to 1 youth at 10 months, just in case the judge orders a youth to borrow.
How many do we
would
have?
not-
How many of those 6 kids are our kids, if I can interrupt?
How many of the 6 kids
Keep
placed at?
Ours? How many placements?
I do believe it's approximately half, so maybe 3
3.
for our own county. And I'm just gonna say that number to be safe, because I don't know the exact number. But we've been looking at utilizing other placements instead of the Barrow Boys Ranch so that we can try to reduce our budget in that area right there. And then on Fund 1450570 is our juvenile hall physician. We've looked at everything that we can to help kind of offset some of those costs. And part of that is looking at the Affordable Health Care Act and how we're gonna be able to utilize some of our other community partners with public health, health and human services, and mental health in order to, and the jail, in order to pool all of our resources to see what are we gonna be able to do to help us save some money in these areas.
The juvenile hall physician is paid, reimbursed completely from public health realignment.
You use the same, same doctor that the jail uses?
Yes, we do. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Then Fund 1450571 is the Juvenile Hall Hospital. We've worked with Health and Human Services to try to keep those costs as low as we possibly can in order to, have the youth qualify for Medi-Cal. So Medi-Cal is paying for a lot of their services, and we're really hoping that with the Affordable Health Care Act, that'll help us out even more. We've been able to keep everything down, and we've been able to get a couple of youth who needed surgeries, Medi-Cal, on an emergency basis, so that those costs would be covered as well.
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
What they do is when they find a child that needs surgery, they've got to run through an emergency process with Health and Human Services to qualify them for medical care, get them out of the facility so that they're not, not in there, because they're not eligible. I mean, there's a great deal of administrative work that goes to do this, and give you an example of the kind of length it is and say,
I have
Go ahead.
one question on your insurance under the Fund 105 in your deal. You have insurance where you almost cut it in half from your actual of last year. I mean, it went way up from 11, 12, it was only 11,000, and last year it was 50,000, this year you're down to 25,000. Why is there such a variation in the insurance?
And those are the costs that are provided to,
The health insurance, that's that cafeteria health
That's
insurance.
I see what you're talking about. You're talking about insurance in the probation budget unit 0561. That's property and liability insurance, and it is, the auditor's office calculates the distribution of those premiums to all the departments each year, as well as workman's comp. It's, let's
This is
see,
down on 1,500?
it's probably, the reduction is probably because of the experience piece, which is 70% of the premium is based on claims, 10 years of history. So if once a claim drops off the history, the premium will go down if there's no more claims. Can I add something to the Fund 145 discussion? The court fines, there's $620,000 in revenue included there. Those are fees, fines, and forfeitures that are collected by the courts and distributed to the county, again by the auditor's office. But those are actually general fund discretionary revenue. And it was many years ago, probably, that it was decided by the board to apply those revenues to the probation fund rather than put them into general fund to be allocated there, so.
And the reason being is because we were trying to fund this juvenile hall and probation operation, so if we were not to do it the way with the hall, then that would be money that could be shifted back into the general fund.
Right. And the other piece of that is right below the revenue, there's a state 50% excess court fines, which is a negative. So anything collected in court fines above approximately $430,000 a year is split 50-50 between the state and the county. So that can be a little bit of a moving target.
Is there several instances like that of monies that we could put in our discretionary spending that have been, you know, sort of earmarked and forgot about for quite a while, like similar to the 620,000?
I don't think so. I think this is the biggest. As the conversation progresses, I'll bring these things to your attention.
Could we, with the other sheet, we're sort of making a to-do list, if you will, the things to look into, can we keep a tab of these type of monies too?
I think it was on my list.
Yeah, it was on the one-time list.
Oh, there is a list like that, a one-time list?
It's in the very front of your binder, Larry?
Yeah,
Well, this is different.
yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, then I'm thinking of the.
Yeah, this
I'm
isn't
talking
part
about
of
those
this.
monies that are, could be reallocated to, you know, to general fund or discretion. Discretionary uses rather than shoved in a program for forever.
Because it's part of that 145 fund, I mean, that 620,000 funds about 80% of that $250,000 subsidy that we put in there, and that's how it's grown to now. That number a few years ago was a lot less, both the subsidy and this, but the two of them have been relatively staying out there.
Right.
It's a policy decision, do we want to spend that money on 128 kids?
Okay. Any other questions for Jen? Did you get through that comfortably?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't, Jim says each person we're supposed to ask you, what would
Oh, that's right. Thank
what would
you,
you
Larry.
like to de-emphasize?
What would I like to de-emphasize?
That's a new term, that's a new term for cats.
Politically correct, or?
Larry's making,
No, what is it?
Mary's making fun of me now.
I was gonna say, the one thing that I did promise the department that I would do is, you know, fight for all of our current officers, because those vacancies that we have, we really need to make sure that we get those filled, because the current workload that everybody is taking on, they've really stepped up to the plate, and they've really come together to work together, to get along together, and to make sure that we're meeting everybody's deadlines. Some of them have been faced with some pretty insurmountable tasks, and they've all banded together, and they've all looked at making sure that those were completed. So one of the things that I know that we truly do need in our department is our officers, and we need to be able to fill the 3 vacancies that we
You
have.
have 3 out of how many positions?
Yes, out of, in the, okay, wait a minute, now I've gotta look at it. Out of the 561, wait, 0561. The current amount of positions that we
You
have in there is
14 positions, you're down 3.
correct. And with the CCP paying for half of one probation officer, 0561 would pay for half of a probation officer, and it would pay for half of a juvenile officer, and then in 114, Fund 114 would pay for another half of a juvenile probation
So you
officer.
have 15 and a quarter positions in the juvenile hall, which is the 0562 account.
Correct.
How many vacancies do you have there?
We have one that we're gonna leave unfunded, and we have one supervisor position that needs to be filled so that we're in compliance with the Board and State Community Corrections Title 15.
While we're asking those kind of blue sky type of questions, Jim, how do you see AB 109 kind of rolling out this coming year and in the future? I mean, is your workload gonna?
Our workload, what we did was, ever since the three-judge panel made the decision to release the other 10,000 prisoners, we've looked at what is our increase in referrals for that PRCS caseload versus the previous year in each month. And so far, we've seen in July it increased by 3, in August it increased by 2. And we're not sure exactly how many it's gonna increase for September, because it's looking like we may get 3, more than we did in 2012-13 fiscal year. So it's going to increase the workload. And AB 109 is, gonna, the probation department and the sheriff's department both, we're kind of gonna bear the burden, for some of that. So the only thing we can do is manage the best we can with what we have.
But that's not gonna affect the juvenile part of it, is it? Maybe 109, have no effect on that?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that it has anything to do with that, except for some of our juvenile funding does come out of the realigned funds, which is our youth offender block grant. So that comes from that same 138 fund, and then it transfers out into 0561.
AB 109 was aimed at getting adult offenders out of prison.
Right.
It is. And some of the realignment funding, they kind of lumped everything together, so it's a little,
And we found out that earlier,
yeah.
including about 4 million of health and social services got somehow mixed in with the AB 109 thing.
So we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll be getting that tomorrow.
We'll get into that.
And what do you feel a comfortable workload for your caseworkers are in probation and juvenile hall? I mean, how many people, I guess, can one person take care of?
On the juvenile side, ideally it would be 20 per officer. And on the adult side, it would be depending upon what type of a caseload it was. If it was a low-risk caseload, you wouldn't want any more than 50. If it's a high-risk caseload, no more than 25. And if it's a medium-risk caseload, you'd want no more than 35.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your guys' time, and I really appreciate you guys listening to everything that we have to say, and
We
taking all of that into
appreciate
consideration.
what you try to do, and thank you for
Yep.
being there.
Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm gonna try to run out.
run, Jim,
Oh, I thought you said.
Larry has agreed for just a mere $50,000 front contribution.
So let Rhea go first?
So let Rhea go first.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Larry.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Rhea.
Hi, how you guys doing?
You have a little one-pager. That's good.
Well, I just brought my budget with me because I know you have,
Yeah.
the one in front of it, and I'm more of a, got any questions? I
Talk a
don't
little-
have all revenues and,
Talk a little about what your office does for new members who don't might not fully understand, including whatever.
sure. And actually, probably just to point out
Well-
too, that the fund that we're looking at is the 0372. I don't have control of the conflict defender, which is the 0371, with the exception that I do
What's your PIN number?
0372, 130, 0372.
Tab 12.
You have your own tab in the big book.
Ooh,
What's the tab?
wow.
12.
Well,
Wow.
blue in color, yeah, just like swimming pool
Ocean
color.
Ocean blue, okay.
Ocean blue, swimming pool blue, yeah.
I tried.
You did.
Anyway, I am in charge of the public defender's office, which is the active attorneys that get all the appointments from the courts for felonies, juveniles, and misdemeanors. If we have a conflict, and in a small rural county, unfortunately, everybody hangs out around each other, so quite frankly, every once in a while we get a lot of them, it seems to come in spurts. That's what the 0371 budget for, is for the private contract counsel. And those are paid hourly, appointed by the court. And I know that that budget actually is, the amount, for some reason, is still being governed by what the court did a long, long time ago. And that's, I believe, before that got split up, because the courts used to be part of the county, and they had control over that. Now they don't, except for the fact that they appoint and say these people are the ones that do the cases. And I am an active attorney in the office. I'm not just a department head. In fact, I actually probably more of a practicing attorney than I am an administrator. I handle the entire juvenile caseload. I do felony trials along with my senior deputy, Jacob Zamora, who is the felony deputy. I have a misdemeanor deputy. I help my misdemeanor deputy on Monday afternoons, and then part of our requirements in my office is to help the public on Tuesday afternoons at 1 o'clock. That's the mandatory traffic arraignments. But they're misdemeanors also, and infractions. We're there to answer questions, help them fill out forms, and so that's actually helped a lot with our misdemeanor caseload has gone way down. Because the district attorney is there now, and we negotiate cases. We ask the district attorney, hey, this person wants to plead, what do you want to do? And so they don't come on into our office with a file that we have to follow along and go from there, but we've managed to get that caseload way down. So, any questions about the office itself? No?
Well, maybe Julie or whoever can, your salaries and wages are up by about $80,000, even though we have 5 FTEs.
Part of that, Mr. Chapman, is because unfortunately, when I had somebody leave the office, not come back from a leave of absence, she got unemployment insurance. So about $20,000 of that, I budgeted based on a bill I got for unemployment
Well,
insurance.
that's down under item 0810, unemployment insurance went from 4,600 to 18,700. I'm talking about salaries and wages, because usually unemployment would be budgeted as salaries and wages.
You're talking about the actuals?
The actual,
That similar situation, she had an employee that was not being paid,
Right.
right? But we
Right.
could not fill the position, so this year we're planning on the same number of people. So basically, the actuals are based on 4 people, not 5.
I saved money because I had somebody that wasn't paid for a while and I had temporary help. That was in there, that's why there was an extra help in the actual in 2011, 2012.